Hi guys, my name's Kevin and welcome to the Porsche RS60 Spyder. The Porsche Boxster was launched in the mid-90s and was a tremendous success for Porsche, really helping to really drive forward the profitability of the company. The first generation was a major success, bringing Porsche ownership into the hands of tens of thousands of people who otherwise couldn't quite have stretched to a 911. But the Boxster was a great success not only due to price, but also due to the fact it was a great handling roadster, the best in the market, but also due to the fact that it was practical. It had a boot at the front, it had a boot at the back, it was a great two-door roadster. It was mid-engined with a Boxer engine, which located just behind here, and that meant that the weight distribution was great. The 911s have always had the engines in the rear, and that's always been a challenge for Porsche because it means they're tail heavy. The weight balance has never been 50-50, whereas when you put an engine in the middle, it means that the car is really balanced and really helps for handling. So the 911 was the Boxster was off to a great start with that, and in fact even today the Cayman is deemed to be the best handling Porsche, even though the 911s are obviously more expensive because it's mid-engined, and the only difference between a Cayman and a Boxster is of course the roof, or lack thereof, on the Boxster, which is a convertible. The car that we have here is a very special Boxster. It's a 2008 car and it commemorates the RS60, a very successful racing car, and it was built to commemorate that. The units were limited to 1,960 because the RS60 was made and competed in that year, so only 1,960, and you can see that on the glove box each car has a number, and this is car number 1922 out of 1,960. All of the cars came in silver, all of the cars came with the alloys that you've seen, and standard they all came with a red interior, although for those who were slightly less adventurous it was possible to opt instead for a black leather interior and a black roof. This one has, as you can see behind me, it has the red roof. So if you like red, it's the Porsche for you. Unfortunately for me, I love red. So this was definitely the Porsche for me. Inside, this is the second generation car from 2008. So it has the Porsche interior from that era. So we've got the steering wheel, we've got the three binacles, this is the centre console, but this car had some additions which you wouldn't have found on a standard Boxster. For example, you can see that over these binnacles the cover has been removed to make it more sporty. We've got the sports steering wheel, we've got the ability to, although this is an automatic, which was quite rare on this car, we've got an automatic and we've got the ability to change gears on the steering wheel. And in addition we've got extended leather, so we've got leather not only on these beautiful sports seats, but also we've got them on the door panels, and also on the centre console, which I think is really beautiful to see. In addition we've got these lovely sports seats which have the Porsche emblem embossed on the headrests, and really it is a lovely place to sit, very sporty, but also I think really quite beautiful. But everything laid out very logically, as you'd expect from the Germans, very intuitive, very ergonomic. We've got the features, for example the cup holders are in here, and as you can see each one will slot out. You press here and they come out. You've got two, one for the driver, one for the passenger, beautifully hidden behind this piece of aluminium trim. We've got a really good size glove box. We've got a space in here for CDs to be stored, and we've even got a pen holder, which is really quite handy, although as you can see I really need to find a pen to put in there for those occasions when I need to make a note on the go. We've got a boot at the front, it being mid-engined, so under the bonnet is a really big space, and I've got a suitcase in there to store, and also quite a big boot at the back. So that's really good, and when the hood is up it's actually possible to store between these two doors here and behind the seats, so really practical for a two-door sports car. But anyway, that's enough about the interior and the practicality. Let's see what she's like to drive. Start her up. and every time you start her up it checks the oil, so you don't have to wait 5 seconds, but I tend to. And as you can see, my oil level is perfect, so let's turn her on. And you can hear a lovely rasping exhaust noise from the 3.4 litre straight 6 engine located just behind me. Lovely natural sound from this straight 6, which is naturally aspirated, but if we want to hear even more, we can turn on the sports exhaust, which gives a lovely rasping noise. Let's just put on my seatbelt so we can go off for a spin. And as I say, lovely automatic gearbox. Now, certain traditionalists will deprecate the fact that this has got an automatic and would say, well, you should have gone for the manual. But I must admit, I like having the car change gears for me. I quite like being able to drive with both hands on the wheel, and for me, it really suits this car. It means when you want to press on, the gearbox does a wonderful job of it. If you want to take over and change gear yourself, you can from the steering wheel, but for every other time it's really nice just to be able to relax and let the car change gear for you. So let's just take a right here, and let's take her for a drive. On a day like today, it's just wonderful to take the roof down. I am someone who loves to drive. You can see Mini's got a similar idea over there. I'm someone who loves to get the roof down on convertibles at every opportunity I can get. And in fact, providing it's not raining, I will always put the roof down. But today, although we're in February, we've got a beautiful sunny day and it's lovely and warm. So even normal people might venture to put the roof down and enjoy open-top motoring today. But as I say, for me, even if it was the winter, I would. And this car has the wonderful addition of heated seats, which keeps the interior lovely and warm, even when it's a bit cooler outside, and just encourages you to put the roof down. And let's pull out. We can hear straight away that lovely straight 6, that lovely growl that the engine has. It's really quite wonderful. And I'll pull the side windows up just so you can hear. The wind noise actually for me is really good in this car, because we've got a solid windbreaker behind the seats, which really makes it quite civilised, but I know on camera it'll obviously pick up wind noise, so I put that up so hopefully you can hear me a little bit more easily. The other thing to note on this car is really the steering. It's superb, it's really pin sharp. It's not electric power steering, it's back in the good old days when it was pre-electric, so there's great feel through the steering. You feel really connected to the road, and you can feel everything in the road. It gives you real confidence and the knowledge you need to really get the most out of this car on the road. The suspension at the moment, this is an RS60 Spyder, so it's based on the Boxster S, and it is lower, and it has a firmer suspension than the regular Boxster. But if you wish to, you can turn this on, which is PASM Sport, and that makes the suspension really stiff. I think actually that this is best for track and isn't ideally suited to the very bumpy roads we have in England. But if you really want to feel the road, you can press that and you feel really connected. But I'm going to turn it off for now because I think the normal suspension is sporty enough and strikes a perfect balance between sportiness and comfort. To open her up, she's really responsive, and off we go all the way up to the limit, and then you have to be quick to ensure that you don't exceed it. It's really powerful, it pulls really beautifully, the power delivery is linear, feels like there's a great deal of torque. I don't know what the figures are, but it feels really good, really exhilarating. It's a great engine for the car. this car came out, really, there wasn't a great deal of competition. When it came out in the 90s, well, what was there? There was BMW had the Z3, which came out, you recall, from GoldenEye in the mid-90s. Mercedes, I think slightly later, brought out the SLK, and they were both beautiful cars, both great to be seen in, very comfortable, but they never had the dynamic abilities of the Boxster. Really, the Boxster was in a league of its own, and it still said that for under £100,000 you can't really get a better handling car. This really is that good because of the weight distribution, because of the chassis, because of the technology. The great thing about Porsche is they tend to try to use components across their models where they can. So it means that the interior you've got on this is basically a 911 from the same period, and in fact, to my eye, this is a better looking car than the 911 of its day. Really great looking car. There was a supercar that came out in 2004, a very rare car, and to my eye, this actually looks quite similar, which is a really brilliant thing. It's a really tremendous looking car. Stop here and see if we're ready to go, and we are, and off we go. And that lovely engine, this car almost encourages you to drive at this sort of speed, because when you introduce the power you get that lovely noise from this 6-cylinder engine. It really is lovely to hear. I think the other thing about this car is it's aged just so well. This car's from 2008, and although it doesn't have, the modern navigation and so forth of the newer cars, actually this model doesn't have navigation fitted. And I think that's probably a good thing, because if you had the navigation from 2008, here in 2019 we'd look at it with a great deal of amusement, because the screen would look quite pixelated and the technology would look really rather primitive. Technology has really moved on over the last 10-11 years, but actually to my mind the dynamic abilities haven't, and also the appearance of cars, this to me still looks beautiful, still looks contemporary. It's a really timeless design that I think has aged really well, and these RS60s have actually gone up in value over recent years rather than depreciating, and I think that's something that will continue. This really, to my eye, is a sweet spot. The new Boxster is a bigger car, and although that is great for daily use, actually I think it looks a little bit chubby, whereas this car is really svelte in terms of its lines. It's a really beautiful car. It's got a lovely face with the large oval headlamps, and it almost looks like it's smiling at you. Really pretty from the front. Great rear end, very muscular haunches on this car as it gets wider over the rear wheels. I think that in terms of design, there are a few cars on the road to beat it, particularly at this price point. And if you look at its contemporaries from 2008, we had the Z4, we had the Audi TT, we had the Mercedes SLK, and to my mind, those, even in their more expensive states of trims, whether that is the 3-litre from the Z4 or even the AMGs for the SLKs, or the sportier Audi TTs, they just haven't aged as well. They're just not as beautiful to look at. This car still looks a fantastic car. It still draws people's eye because it's just such a beautiful design. And in terms of desirability to own, it's still as thrilling as it ever was. It doesn't feel a dated car to drive. It feels really pin sharp, and if anything, perhaps newer cars feel slightly more removed from the driving experience. Electric power steering is obviously a necessity as we have more and more autonomous driving functions. To enable the car to steer, you need electric steering. It also has certain economy advantages, but to my mind you just don't feel as connected to the road. You feel more removed, whereas this, you feel really as if you're controlling it. Let's just try and get around this bus, which is doing a tour to this lovely village, the village of Chaddesley Corbett. So it's a real pleasure to drive still. There are other cars that are obviously more powerful, but in terms of just the driving dynamics, the steering, the handling, the responsiveness, the sense of connection with the road, I think there are very few cars to match it. It really is in a league of its own. And the other great thing is you've got obviously the pedigree of the Porsche brand, but actually the cost of ownership isn't that bad either. They're not particularly cheap to insure because they are a powerful car. They are deemed by insurers to be higher risk. But actually in terms of fuel, it's actually quite efficient. The economy is probably in the mid to late 20s, which I think for a car of this nature is actually very good. Servicing, I've chosen to keep this in the Porsche dealer network, so obviously Porsche isn't cheap, but on the older models they do fixed price servicing, and I found really it's not too bad for the car that you've got. In terms of durability, it's proven to be quite a durable car. I find that the battery life on this is brilliant. I tend to only use it at the weekends, and from time to time I'll forget to get it out of the garage, and it always seems to start whenever I come to turn it over. So very impressive on that front. In terms of problems that I've had an issue with the roof whereby something got stuck and it caused a part that's designed to deform, a plastic part that's designed to deform instead of breaking the motor. That went, so I had to have that replaced, but not that expensive. In terms of the gearbox, I had an issue whereby it wasn't engaging, so I had to have that resolved. But beyond that, fortunately, not had any issues, and hopefully that'll prove to be the case going into the future. So actually, not bad, and probably comparable to other vehicles from BMW or Mercedes, but the added edge of having a Porsche. And really the dealer experience, it has been wonderful. Really high standards of service. You really do feel quite special when you take this to the Porsche dealer. It feels like it's going home, and you know it's in good hands. So it's something you pay for, but something which, to my mind, is well worth the investment to keep your car in tip-top condition. And we've got some bike riders here, so let's see if we can get past them safely. Here we go, and neatly in. And let's turn this. So let's see how she is around the corners. Let's push her on a bit. It says slow, but let's see how she's around the corners, and that's really where I think the RS60 is in a league of its own. It really does feel just so connected. The handling is just really brilliant. Here we are at a lovely summit, just on the entrance to the beautiful village of Belbroughton. Always lovely to come over that hill. The other great thing about this car is, although it's great to obviously push it and make it work through the corners, enjoy the quick pickup, actually it's a car that's still quite enjoyable and quite manageable, even at normal road speeds. It's a car that you can do 30 quite easily at. The digital speedometer makes it a bit easier to check that you're not exceeding the limit, and the car seems quite content, whereas other sports cars really would feel quite restless at this speed. But it's still enjoyable. The precision of it is something that you still feel and enjoy, even when you're driving just gently around town, gently around villages. And the engine noise, you don't have to push this car to really enjoy that lovely throaty gurgle. Even at 23 miles an hour, we can hear it, and it's such a lovely noise to hear, particularly when you're going through an area where it can echo off walls, as we were there, beautifully acoustically to listen to. cyclists. If you can hear the brakes squealing, that's because I haven't used it for a while, and the brakes have still got whatever it is that builds up on them, so you can still hear the noise. But the brakes are really good on this. They really do inspire a sense of confidence. Now we've got a bit of a blind corner here, so I might just try and be a little bit careful. Here we go. Sharp corner here. I wonder how many people have ended up in that field, particularly late at night, when pushing on through these windy country lanes. The one thing I would say about this car is it does feel very wide. So when you've got narrow gaps, you do have to pay attention, and the car gets progressively wider at the rear. It's got wider rear haunches to give it stability, but that does mean that sometimes positioning it on slightly narrower roads can be a little bit more difficult, and you do have to take care. Given the suspension and the firmness, you'll want to avoid potholes, so you'll find that on our English roads that you are dodging, for example there, in and out. Let's just check here. Okay, there we go. Some flags. I wonder what's going on. What's going on here? This is the lovely village of Belbroughton, and they have a wonderful scarecrow festival here in the autumn, which always attracts a bit of a crowd.